Welcome. I'm Stephanie Monroney, the Executive Director of Plymouth Healing Communities. Thank you for being here today to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the opening of House of Healing. You know, for many years, Plymouth Healing Communities hosted a luncheon at Plymouth Church for the express purpose of thanking the supporters and donors and volunteers throughout the years who made Plymouth Healing Communities the vital organization that it is. As a matter of fact, before I became the executive director, I was an intern at Plymouth Healing Communities, and I attended my first luncheon in 2016 at the church. So we were really disappointed last year when we couldn't hold our luncheon. And what a year it's been. I express my deepest condolences to all those who grieved and suffered so much through this pandemic. And even though it was an important year, the 20th anniversary of House of Healing, we knew it still wasn't safe enough for us to gather in person. So here we are doing this virtually. As I was preparing for this event, I found a treasure trove of pictures and documents at House of Healing that span the years. There were letters, awards, testimonials, all just showing how powerful an effort it was to bring this vision into reality. And as I was looking at these pictures and reading these letters, I thought I'd really like to hear the voices of the people who made this happen. But we couldn't meet in person. So we resorted to reaching out to a few people to have interviews on Zoom. Now, we all know the limitations of Zoom. We're pretty zoomed out after a year of this, I know. But what came forth was just really special. And so we took all of those interviews and we edited them into one video that we want to show you today. Now, I know there are many others who are a part of this who are not in this video. So while you're watching it, you can use the YouTube chat function to call out the names of people who were a part of making this happen, maybe who are no longer with us. You can look and see who else is on this live streaming event and just call out to them and say hello in the YouTube chat. Now, I want to caveat this. Any mistakes in names, roles, the years, the time, they're mine and mine alone. This is the beginning of a year-long archival project to capture in words and pictures the beginning of House of Healing. So any mistakes that you see today, simply reach out to me after the event and we'll correct it. So now to the video, Gathering in Gratitude.
A lot of things were happening at Plymouth Church where we were thinking more and more about the issues of mental illness in general. Our pastor, Tony Robinson, was willing to share about his own journey with mental illness. For the first time, one of the members of the congregation, having lived all his life with mental illness and not saying anything publicly about it, was willing to speak up, and others had family members, myself included, who struggled with mental illness. And we said, this may be something we can try.
Before House of Healing, there was something called the Mental Health Task Force, who started meeting around the topic of mental illness. And we developed an agenda, basically three things. First thing was education. There being a lot of misunderstandings and stigmas around mental illness. Second part of the agenda was family support. And then the third item on the agenda was the planning for a House of Healing. And that stemmed from a conversation that several of us had in Craig Renebaum's house, Craig being the mental health chaplaincy pastor who had a street ministry throughout Seattle. And Craig talked to us about what he was observing on the streets. And that was a kind of a recycling where people with mental illness would reach a point of desperation. They'd be hospitalized at Harborview, and then they'd be released with no place to go and no support structure.
I was a discharge planner at Swedish, not dealing with mentally ill, but I was sending people back to the streets. Well, Craig was seeing these people go into the hospital and get their medicine organized and be out. Were just homeless and had no place to go.
Among all the discharging options from the hospital, you just hated discharging someone either to the streets or to a shelter where they wouldn't get the attention. Because coming out of the inpatient psychiatric unit, you have a lot of attention. And for many individuals, a discharge is such a rough transition.
When the whole process of companioning the mentally ill that managed to find their way into Plymouth Church on Sunday mornings, Craig did the training through the chaplaincy of all of our welcomers. So there's just a growing awareness about mental health needs. Craig shared his vision about a healing community in Seattle. And that found a responsive chord in Nancy Smith, who probably my best friend.
And he said, I have this idea for a house of healing. It's never been tried anywhere in the country, but I believe strongly that when people leave Harborview Hospital after being treated for their mental illness and they have a home to go to, and a companion for the journey, it will make all the difference in their lives.
And Craig's vision was maybe we could put together not just housing, but supported housing. And that was his idea of a companion model.
It's making new history, it's building new relationships. It's the importance of seeing them as a whole individual beyond the diagnosis. This is what companionship and that creation of community in the House of Healing.
It was a dream that we wanted to have happen.
Finding the house itself was Nancy Smith and I, as partners in crimes, being women of action. We hadn't actually formed an entity or done anything, but since we had a fairly well crystallized concept through Craig, and the very first thing we had to do was find a house. So Nancy and I started prowling the streets of Seattle looking for the right house. In 1999, right, when we first started looking and physically went, because it wasn't quite as easy.
I had been involved in working on housing for 20 years, always looking for new housing opportunities. And so I was delighted when this came up at Plymouth Church.
We just checked the want ads and however else we used to figure out what houses were for sale. And then we cruised the neighborhoods.
She and I went around and we looked at a number of houses.
Those two women can accomplish anything, I think.
We are going to do this. We better find a house. And somehow I came across the house and I thought, oh, well, maybe that will work. And then the next thing, I was going out to get my lunch and I ran into Craig at an intersection of downtown, a block from the church. He was crossing the street and I ran up to him and I said, Craig, I have your house.
We decided it was the place.
We ended up with the one that turned out to be the House of Healing.
The other very important part of that trio was Carl Newell, who had recently moved to Seattle, was involved in Plymouth Housing Group on the board, but then also realized that this was a place where he could make a huge contribution as an architect.
Who was able to visualize how we would add to the house and still retain the feel of the house because it's a 100-year-old house, basically.
He saw the possibilities of that big house being transformed from a 4-bedroom house into an 8-bedroom house. I could not imagine that, but that's what his training as an architect is all about.
They're really people who walk the talk. There are people who can talk a good game, but then there's other groups of what I call faithful people who actually try to live it. And all of these people, these were real faithful people, and they were inspirational. You know, I just put out a call for people to show up and on a Saturday afternoon, and they showed up, offered their sweat equity to help make it happen.
We took out insulation. We used hammers and took down walls, took wallpaper off of walls, moved stuff, all of the stuff that comes down when you undo a house.
They were really fun. I mean, picking up a sledgehammer or a crowbar after a week in the office was always good therapy for me.
It was a chance to work with my hands to do some, remodeling, painting, deconstruction, things like that. And it was also something that needed to be done. There was a real need for Plymouth Healing Communities.
Yeah.
I've been grateful my entire life of ministry and work to have been sent really incredibly capable people that have been willing to do the work with me. A lot of times people talk about the leaders, but really it's the team. So many of the companions that were at the House of Healing that did the work too. It really is just over the years, hundreds of people that have been involved in this journey.
One interesting thing that happened while we were deconstructing the House of Healing, we rolled back the carpet and there was an envelope opened up and there was several $100s there, maybe $1,000.
Gosh, I think it was $1,000 or $2,000. It was a lot. It was $100 bills.
And I think it was $4,000.
So we got the money back to them, they were so grateful. They came to the house. They were so grateful.
When I was living in, I'd get up in the morning and somebody would be ahead of me and made coffee. And we sit down and talk and figure out, they talk about what they're going to do today. And it was just a very warm reception of having me in there as well as the resident.
Opportunity to remodel the kitchen. It was really wonderful. Outcome of that is just a kitchen that, works so much better. It was a labor of love and community as well as making the house work better.
We had some wonderful cookouts in the back patio. During the summer, I would be the grill master. Beautiful summer days out in the back patio at the House of Healing. And those were fun, either farewell celebrations for house managers or that. Some really fond memories.
But I also loved having the contact with the companions. And I love what drew them to give a year of service to the House of Healing. That to me was a wonderful tapping into a resource.
Time to time where they would say, you're welcome to come and just join in and help cook and get to know people. And Dave and I did that off and on for several years.
Sit down and chat with companions and the residents. It was so nice to just be there as a fellow human being, supporting each other, really.
We all sat around the table. We'd talk for a long time. The dishes got done later and later.
The dinner table at House of Healing and people going around and sharing gratitudes, even when they're struggling at times. I think that, that always is a memory that I have. I can't remember his name, but he said that this is the first time in his life that he had ever done this. And I said, what do you mean the first time in your life that you'd ever done this? He says, this is the first time in my life that I've ever had dinner around a table with other people.
I'd say it was among the most energizing and rewarding experiences I've ever had in my life. I'm so grateful to have been able to work with so many talented and generous people over those 15 years. It was a real joy.
Immense gratitude to the companions and the residents who have filled that structure, that house, with community and love and healing and made it a home.
I have gratitude to Plymouth Healing Communities for being an amazing place for me to be for a number of years, to be a very supportive place, to be a very, I feel like it's part of that clay and that mold for me in my own life.
Thank you for 20 years. Looking forward to 20 more or 25 more or 50 more. congratulations on a work well done and a charge to continue the work into the future.
I think I toast the success of a vision towards a different view of homeless people. And I would credit training that Craig Rettenbaum gave us. I'm very proud that my husband and I were associated with Plymouth. I wish Plymouth many more happy years of serving the community.
I would raise a toast of gratitude to all the people that got it started and kept it going for all these years, but mostly to the people who lived in the house and live in the other houses that have come on since. Because I think that whole experience has enriched all of our lives in many, many ways.
Best wishes for many more for the health of the community and happiness and meaning and joy within the community.
I just want to keep it strong and keep it growing. And I mean, I'm so glad we have so many more houses for the people to go to and that can find housing for them before they leave the house is real strong.
I really take my hats off to them for saying, yes, we will figure it out. Certainly, so there will be things that we can never imagine would be issues when you start.
Hopefully, House of Healing and Inghouse and Plymouth Healing Communities will be around for another 20 years and hopefully another 50 years.
I hope it goes for years and years and years. Everybody is entitled to a home. This community provides that for individuals that need it, really need a home. So good luck to the future.
Yeah, keeping it going.
Yep, keeping it going.
You have the courage and the faith that you can figure things out and make it work.
Never give up. Never give up.
As I said before the video, we only spoke to a few people. This is just our first take on this. So if you would like to reach out to me, send me an email. Send me your memories, your contributions. Tell me about others that you worked with. Send me corrections to anything I got wrong. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to talk on the phone or even meet for a socially distanced coffee. I just want to learn more about how each of you made House of Healing what it is. Even though this was a really rough year with the pandemic, House of Healing continued. People still came out of Harborview and lived in the house and thrived and went through the healing journey. As a matter of fact, some who entered the house in 2019 were the first to move next door into Inghouse. And as powerful as the origin story of House of Healing is, there are other stories of residents and companions that are just as moving. And you can hear these healing stories if you go to our website, www.plyhc.org, and click on Our Work. The companionship model that Craig Rettenbaum pioneered with the mental health chaplaincy and at House of Healing continues to be the core guiding principle of the work that we do at Plymouth Healing Communities. So I wanted to take a moment now to share the voices of two people who were living or working at the house throughout the pandemic. The first is Jem Stavenga, who was our program manager from 2016 through the beginning part of this year. Jams left just a few weeks ago to pursue teaching and working in individual therapy. The other is Elle Warner, who's still living at the house today as a resident companion. Elle moved into the house in 2019 after completing seminary studies, and she decided to stay beyond the traditional 1 year of service to continue living at the house. When she leaves the house next year, she's going to continue training as a chaplain. I met both Jams and Elle at the house right before Jams left for a socially distanced conversation. And I want to share some of what they told me with you today.
If you haven't been to an inpatient setting, there's kind of a high security to it in the sense that there are people who are inpatient who are involuntary, and so they don't just let people come and go. I would imagine for people who are there involuntarily and have not come around to the idea that this is supposed to be helpful, it does feel like a kind of jail. But the biggest thing I hear from people is that there's just not enough to do. You just really have a lot of time. And that's what's hard to deal with, even maybe more than not being able to leave. So then when I go there and I'm meeting people, they set us up in a little room to talk, me and the prospective resident, and people are generally very nervous. They have heard a little bit about the house because the staff there have heard about the house for many years, that they've seen clients move here. And so people get kind of excited, like, oh, this could be really good for me, but I think there's also just nervousness of like, am I gonna be accepted? And then what is that even gonna be like when I move in? And so I'm usually trying to make people feel at ease and just first off asking them what questions they have, what have they heard, and then I try to start filling in the gaps. And then gradually we start to have a conversation even about how they came to be in the hospital. So it's the beginning of learning their story and trying to connect with them so that they feel like this is really going to be purposeful. There's going to be something for me to do in this program that's going to empower me, and it's going to also bring with it a sense of community. There's going to be people there with me to walk alongside, is what we say, as I'm figuring out where I go next. The history of the house has involved creating customs or rituals for welcoming people and then also saying farewell. This is a house of transition as much as a house of healing, and maybe healing is about transitions. We have often put a banner up here. That was something we were doing a few years back that would say, welcome so-and-so, their name, or there'd be a message over here on the whiteboard. We would put a sign on the door of the room that they're moving into. Someone would do something very creative, unique to that person, even before really meeting them. And then, we used to have dinners Monday through Friday, so inevitably someone would come in and there'd be dinner that night. And at that dinner, we would be welcoming them by introducing the gratitudes at dinner to them, as well as the whole idea of a communal meal. That would be an opportunity for us to kind of be creative. So sometimes I would ask people, instead of just saying what you're grateful for today, could you say something about what you have sort of learned since moving in, or what you think you would have liked to have known when you moved in? Like you're kind of speaking to your past self. But even when we don't do things like that, just the custom of doing gratitudes, I hear pretty regularly that people are very appreciative of that.
Some things that have been profound have been having moments where people just kind of completely open up to me and share very deep, very personal things that wouldn't happen unless we had this sort of intimate setting that we have and the sort of trust that gets built in this kind of environment. Repeatedly, what I hear from people in the first couple months is, I feel safe for the first time. I've not felt safe in years, but I feel safe here. with my own background, I often didn't feel safe. And so that I get to be part of the reason why somebody gets that feeling is incredibly rewarding and healing for myself. It's given me a lot of perspective on my own life and my own struggles with mental health issues, but also given me a lot of perspective that even though things haven't always been easy for me, that I've still had a lot of opportunity and a lot of privilege that a lot of people have not. In that sort of chaotic distribution of the cards, that even in the most dire circumstances, people find ways to be happy, people find ways to adapt and not let their life be robbed of them, even though they don't have material things necessarily, necessities, not just material things. It's also taught me a lot about just how people can bounce back from points of despair. I'm hoping to take just a sense of being a calm witness in the center of chaos. I think that's the biggest thing that I want to take from this.
I just really appreciate this house. I mean, physically, this house has been really good to us, but then also it has allowed for so many people to feel a sense of home and to feel belonging, and that they, yes, are part of a human community, and regardless of what they've weathered, and yeah, this house somehow exhibits that too. So I here's to the house.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're going to miss Jams. They made a huge contribution to Plymouth Healing Communities, but I look forward to introducing you to Padrika Norfleet, our new program manager, and some of the other staff members at Plymouth Healing Communities just as soon as it's safe to gather in person. We've all seen the headlines in the news about the toll COVID has taken on the mental health of so many people. This work is more important than ever. The work of providing supportive housing and companionship to people who are struggling with mental illness has never been more important. And it all began with you, the people who took that leap of faith more than 20 years ago to make this vision a reality. None of this would be possible without your financial contributions and your gifts of sweat equity, time, and presence. We hope to see you at our fall fundraiser event, Opening the Door to Hope, in September. So save the date, more on that to come. But in the meantime, thank you, and here's a toast to another 20 years.